Dominic Raab was making the best he could of an impossible wicket. And I mean, I was also Foreign Secretary, not for 2 years, but for 5 years. And I don't recall more than just a couple of occasions for really good reasons, like serious illness, when Tony Blair did not complete the calls to appropriate head of government, or in my case, I didn't complete the call to the appropriate foreign minister. It's much worse than a scandal. It's kind of rot in the heart of the government is also sucking the life out of the government. And this is extraordinarily diversionary of all the kind of work that should be being done within government. And I know that Prime Minister Boris Johnson is going to the Ukraine today with Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary. And we heard Dominic there saying, oh, well, he's been in the lead on trying to sort out the Ukraine. But across the world, as you will know from the researches your people will have done on foreign press, the United Kingdom is a laughingstock, and Johnson is not taken seriously at all. Yes, he's agreeing with the United States, but why has Germany taken a completely different approach to the Ukraine? Why isn't President Macron taking a different view? It's partly for their own internal politics, but in the old days, a British Prime Minister would have had a very good fist at leading the rest of of Europe, certainly, and pushing the United States president along, and that hasn't happened at all. They take no notice of him.
I'm intrigued to know your take on one of the points I was discussing with the Deputy Prime Minister, former Foreign Secretary, just like you. And I'd made the point that there should have been a phone call yesterday between Boris Johnson and Putin. He said that these schedules are moved all the time, and it's absolutely nothing to read into that. Just because he was in the chamber talking about Sue Gray, it can happen another time. Is that a reasonable response?
Well, they're not moved all the time like this. I mean, this was a big deal. It was a particularly big deal for Boris Johnson to have his press people announce that he, Johnson, was talking not just to a head of government, but to a head of state in Vladimir Putin. It shows further evidence, if you like, of sort of congenital systemic chaos in Downing Street. I mean, didn't somebody think about the fact that if they were going to have a call with Putin, it might be a good idea not to schedule it at the time of Sue Gray's report? Since Moscow is 3 or 4 hours, depending on time of year, ahead of London, why didn't they have it in the morning before Sue Gray's report was received? And just say, we're terribly sorry, just as you, Mr. Putin, can't make it, say in your hours of darkness, which are different from ours. We can't make it for reasons we don't need to disclose on Monday afternoon and Monday evening. So it is, say, aside from the humiliation that he hasn't been able to do his job as Prime Minister, which is on foreign policy, talk to heads of government. It's just the reflection of somebody just not having not getting the idea that there could be a problem, and the two things won't work. You can't be in the House of Commons and taking a call from Vladimir Putin. Sorry.
How worried should we be about what's happening on the border with Ukraine?
We should be pretty worried. I mean, it's very difficult to say whether this situation will result in a Russian invasion, because I think Russia realizes that the price of that in non-military terms, and maybe in military terms, is going to be very intense. And it had the experience, let me say, as the UK and the US and others did as well, of getting bogged down in Afghanistan. That was for 10 years. Excuse me. And will it want to get bogged down again? So, I think I'm more optimistic than I was, and indeed as each day passes, I think the prospect of a Russian invasion will diminish, but it's still there, and it depends on keeping the pressure up and showing the Ukrainians that we are supporting them.
Okay. What's your advice to Liz Truss? She's got COVID at the moment, so she can't head over to Ukraine with the Prime Minister. She can't go to Moscow. What sort of diplomacy can you carry out from behind your desk?
You can do quite a lot, particularly, I mean, the crucial thing about phone calls and these days Zoom and team calls in diplomacy is you need to have built up the relationships first. I mean, it's not that much different from normal human relations. So if she's got a good relations with other foreign ministers, then she'll be able to make the calls. And sometimes you have to make the calls and you've never met the people in your life. But I mean, I think Liz should spend more time thinking about the Ukraine and rather less time thinking about the next post she puts on Instagram as part of her putative leadership bid, which I think for her, I say to her as someone who knew her quite well, as well as for the country, is a mistake.
She says that the Prime Minister has her wholehearted support and she has no interest in being Prime Minister.
I know, people always say that. I mean, it's some, and I mean, the truth is that Boris Johnson will have Liz Truss's wholehearted support until Boris Johnson is not there. Well, who knows, in the secrecy of the ballot of the Conservative Parliamentary Party, if there is a ballot, how Liz Truss or Dominic Raab will vote. But I watched Dominic Raab face your very difficult questions and give in a sense, the best non-answers he could think of. But what the government's having to think about is that this is going to go on and on and on. And every time anything happens, whatever the subject is, the issue will be understandably shifting and shifted by the journalists or by opposition MPs onto the Prime Minister's behaviour. I mean, I can't think of any other occasion in my lifetime when a Prime Minister has faced this level of destabilization of his own choosing. So whatever Dominic Raab or Liz Truss say about the fact that they will give their Prime Minister full support, well, they do for the time being, they will get more and more fed up with this. And it's not, in my view, going to go away.
It is down to the backbenchers and his other Conservative colleagues as well, isn't it? Because Labour does not have a big enough majority, even with other flavours of politics as well from the House of Commons. And so it's up to the Conservatives to decide whether he stays in power or not. And it certainly looks as though for now he still has their backing. What does that say about the Conservatives to that side of the House?
Well, I think there are some. I mean, I know there are very, very many perfectly decent Conservatives. We saw examples of those in Theresa May and Andrew Mitchell yesterday, who are absolutely appalled by this. And I'm not. We had lots of difficulties in government. You do, including Afghanistan and above all Iraq. But we've never had. And I never saw it on the other side. I didn't see it with Margaret Thatcher or John Major or David Cameron. This kind of personal failure of character, which is eating away at the government. So I do apologise. I was taken by my own phrases and forgot your question.
You know what? That's happened to me twice in 2 days now by former foreign secretaries for the Labour Party. And I thought I was doing quite well. I was basically asking about the moral fibre of Conservatives on that side of the House who don't want to get rid of the leader.
What does it say about them? Well, they'll have to make their own minds up about this, about where their interests lie. The crucial thing everybody has to think about in the House of Commons, above all else, is staying there. How do you stay there? That means how do you get re-elected? And you can't take any seat for granted. I mean, we found that the last election in December 2019, when we lost catastrophically a number of seats, which frankly, the Labour Party, and particularly awful, egregious Jeremy Corbyn, had taken for granted. And the Conservatives will find the same. I mean, back in 1997, we won most of the seats in Essex. It's my home county. I know it very well. And the Conservative seats went down like flies. And so, and bear in mind that since the Conservatives have only a handful of seats, like as we do in Scotland, they're in a minority in Wales. They're very, very dependent for their majority on what happens in English seats. And in a lot of the so-called red wall seats, we already know that there is fury about the way in which Boris Johnson has taken the British public and the voters in those areas for fools. So I think a few more weekends where members of Parliament, particularly new ones who've given Mr. Johnson his majority, are getting their head scrubbed by their voters, may see a shift. If it doesn't, it will just tell me that the Conservatives have lost the will to survive. And I don't actually think that's true.
So why are Labour flailing at the polls again?
Failing at the polls? I probably missed something this morning.
Yeah, so the latest polls are suggesting that the lead that Labour had has been cut in half. In other words, I suppose the other way of looking at that is that people are either deciding that they prefer Boris Johnson to Keir Starmer, or they're bored with the Sue Gray story. Well,
we're still ahead in the polls. I mean, it would be pretty surprising if we weren't. They will bob up and down. I know one says that when you're below the other side in the polls. I personally think that Keir Starmer has done well, and the public have been able to see this man for the man of values that he is, and compare and contrast him with Mr. Johnson. And there'll be a by-election on Thursday, but that's to do with the murder of Sir David Amess, and I don't think we'll get anything out of that, not least because the main parties aren't standing there. But I'm pretty optimistic about the results of the May elections. And if you want, we can have a side bet on that. And I'll have to come on the following week and eat humble pie.
What did you make of what Ian Blackford got up to yesterday? Rules is rules. You know, you can't expect the Prime Minister to abide by rules and then the leader of the SNP not to.
Mr. Blackford is a kind of pantomime character, really.
Oh, no, he isn't.
Oh, yes, he is.
But did he do the right thing? You know, he would say he's a man of conviction.
Yeah, you can make a conviction point without having to break the rules. That's my view. I'm afraid I haven't got a great deal of time for the Scottish National Party, Nationalist Party. I mean, they are all things to all people, provided they're complaining and pitching themselves against the English and taking more money from English taxpayers than English taxpayers get for themselves, and then complaining some more. And one day, although it has been a very long time coming and there's been a Labour failure in Scotland, the SNP support will twist and fall.
OK, good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us again, Jack Straw. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.